I am so excited right now. Bear with me. If this post doesn't have the best punctuation at certain points, but I am on cloud 9. I thought it's been long enough since my initial post, the I recovered tech from a crashed spacecraft. So consider this that update that I promised. Okay, so let me summarize the boring shit that happened. Firstly, I completed my client's joke calculator, and I'm happy to announce that he's out of my life. Secondly, the silver wiring that I ordered to fix the alien tech arrived. Oh, and thirdly, I succeeded in fixing it. I'm just going to leave out the technical details because it's repetitive to write. So after soldering the wires, fitting them into a cable conduit, and reattaching them to the cable head, I sat back and admired my work. I had accomplished what nobody else has. Well, not to my knowledge anyway, at least. My adrenaline was through the roof, and the more I looked at the cable, the more pride I felt. I, a human, just repaired an extraterrestrial piece of hardware. Even though I was ecstatic about the newly fixed cable, I still felt like I was forgetting something. When I picked up the white circuit board, I realized that I only fixed what was likely the visual output for the screen. Well, yeah, I was a little annoyed, and yeah, I cried a little, but that didn't change what I had done. I mean, still invigorated with a major sense of accomplishment, I began to analyze the circuit board again. Remember that mysterious switch in the middle of the board? Relative to its position, there was another board-to-cable connector on the bottom of the board, connected to it. There was a similar cable. It was thicker than the visual output cord, and the plastic coating was white. When I first saw it, I was so sure it would also be damaged, but no. I nearly jumped through the fucking roof. The white cable was in pristine condition. I had a feeling that it had to be the power supply, so I looked down at the other end of the cord, finding that the plug was, well, not even close to compatible with any power supply in my house. It wasn't the usual two-pronged design that you're used to seeing with cord plugs. It was so strange. The plug was a circular, solid block of metal. I don't know why this alien race loves circles and spheres so much. Who am I to question superior design? I stared at the plug, accepting defeat, and nearly just throwing in the towel, but then I had an idea. Now, these aliens favor superconductive metal, as shown in their choice of silver wiring, and the plug must also be very, very conductive, right? I had to see if I could find a way to power the screen's circuit board. I knew I'd need some raw electrical power, a power source that would allow me to run a current directly into the plug's metal surface. I didn't need a custom-made outlet. Well, at least not yet. Anyway, I had my sights set on finding a proper power supply. As I paced my room, pondering what to do next, I heard a knock at my door. Due to my last interactions with a shady cop at my door, I kind of recoiled at the knocking. "Just a minute!" I shouted, running my fingers through my greasy, unkempt hair. My fear was high, causing my legs to shake, my heart to race, and my face to drip sweat. I had a bad feeling about this unexpected visitor. Did the government somehow catch wind of my stolen alien tech? Were the cops back to put a bullet in my brain? I could see the headlines rushing through my mind. Hermit programmer, victim of random home invasion. They were going to kill me, take the technology, make sure that nobody knew the truth of my passing. I debated myself on whether I should answer the door or sneak out the back and hope that nobody sees. I had it all planned out. I'd take some bottled water, open my backpack, just bolt into the nearby woods. I almost went through with my plan until I heard a familiar voice. "Come on, man, you still alive in there?" A male voice yelled. I had the bottle of water in my hand, ready to shoot through the back and into the thick brush, but I knew that voice. Hesitantly, I approached my front door. I peeked through the peephole, and to my surprise, it was an old friend of mine. To keep both our identities anonymous, I'll call my friend Greg, and we'll call me John. Relieved, I opened the door, breathing easy and giving Greg a smile. "John, what the hell? Where the hell have you been, man?" Greg asked. "I've been here," I replied, tapping my foot impatiently. "I've been making movies, bruh. Selling to the junkies. Saying strapped. You know, what's good?" I don't know. I guess I should explain Greg's, hood-like lifestyle. You see, I used to live in what you'd call a ghetto. Greg was always selling pot and shrooms to the party kids, but selling to junkies? That was unexpected. "Junkies? You alright?" I inquired, gesturing for him to come inside the house. Better than ever, homie. You know how much paper you make off those fools? It's ridiculous. I'm sure, Greg, but don't you think that's kind of fucked up? What do you mean by that? Well, I mean that if you're selling to junkies, then you might be slinging some bad shit. Greg had a pretty irked expression on his face. He almost looked like he heard the lecture before, and he was sick of it. Look, man, I gotta get out of the hood-ass place, right? Look at you, John. You're out here doing computer shit, living in a nice-ass house. You got nobody trying to run up on you. You know, I gotta sell that smack, man. Gotta make that money. Get the fuck out. I sympathize with Greg's sentiment. I mean, the only reason I got out of the ghetto was because I pursued my passion. You know how hard it is to code when you hear a drive-by happening 4 blocks away? Not a very peaceful, comfortable environment to be working in. I mean, I get that, Greg. But listen, right? You're not a bad guy. You don't have to sling that shit to get out of that shithole. You said it yourself. I'm doing well for myself, and I got out doing some nerdy computer shit. Well, why don't you just, do what you're passionate about? Then work your way up to make some clean, legal money. Greg paused, looking down at the floor, thinking about what I said. Hey man, can I sit on your couch? I gotta open up about some personal shit, Greg asked with sad, desperate eyes. I obliged, walking with him to the couch. However, we couldn't take a load off and rest there because, like an idiot, I left the alien hardware in bin on the couch. Oh, sorry, guess I left my spare PC parts out. I'll move them, Greg laughed, holding me back with one arm as he reached into the bin. The fuck is this? Greg said as he held up the smooth chrome ball. Oh, this shit's heavy, John. What's it made of? With haste, I swiped the ball from his hands, making the atmosphere in the room very awkward. I don't know how this got there, but this is a family heirloom. It's very important to me, I explained, lying to him as if my life depended on it. Sorry, John, I'm just misfucking with you, man. It brings me back to the good old days, you know? With a concerned face, I sat Greg down, taking a seat next to him as I listened to his words. Things have been pretty shit. I'm back at home. My ride got impounded. My girl's fucking some punk. My dad, he got beat by some dudes I ripped off. You're ripping people off now? I retorted, a tone of sarcasm in my voice. No, not like all the time, bro. I couldn't get all the coke I needed from my supplier, so I cut the brick with some flour and sold that shit. Ah, so why'd they beat up your dad? Why not kick your teeth in? Greg chuckled, looking as if he needed a good laugh. I wasn't home. Guess they just beat the fuck out of my dad to send me a message. If I ever see those bitch-made motherfuckers, I'll pop them on sight. With that, Greg lifted up his shirt, retrieving a pistol from his waistband. Whoa, put that shit away, Greg, I exclaimed, leaning back in my seat as he waved the gun around. Cool it, man. Cool it, man. I ain't some dopey-ass fool, right? I know my gun safety, Greg replied, tucking the pistol back into his waistband. I would assume that you would have to be an expert in gun safety, considering the fact that it's always pointed at your dick. Greg let out a jovial, hearty laugh, clinging onto my shoulder as his face turned red. That's the shit I missed. You're a goofy motherfucker, John. God, I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. Thanks, but none of that answered my question. Why don't you just, chase your passion and make money off of it? An awkward silence washed over the two of us, only breaking after a long sigh from Greg. That's the thing, man. I don't know what my passion is. Stay on the grid, trying to make enough money to get out of the fucking place. That's it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I nodded, thinking of something to say that would make him feel better. Well, he likes selling things. And you're apparently good at it, so why not pursue that? And no, I'm not talking about drugs. Greg snickered, shrugging as he threw his hands up. You think I like selling? Shit, man, if I can make as much money flipping burgers as I do selling, I'd be doing that. Being the antisocial, borderline misanthropic person that I am, I was at a loss for what to say to him. I struggled to say anything of use to Greg, but since he's a chatty kind of guy, he carried the conversation on without me. Look, bro, I appreciate the hell out of talking to you, but man, I got some business to get on top of. I mean, we're just looking for a real homie to catch up with. Yeah, because honestly, there ain't no real friends back home. With that, Greg stood up, gave me one of those handshake hugs, and then left. As I watched the only friend I've ever seen in months drive off, I felt an emptiness inside of me. It's been way too long since I've seen him, and really, that goes for anyone else in my life. However, I couldn't let that get in the way of my work. As much as my isolation ate away at me, it also gave me the time and privacy I needed to work on the alien technology. After Greg's car drove over the horizon, I knew I had to immediately begin work again. It wasn't a choice for me. I had to know what that small, cracked screen would show me. Fumbling with a cord, I shut my blinds, making sure that absolutely no prying eyes could see me. Sure, I practically live in the middle of nowhere, but the thought that someone could be watching made my skin crawl. Once again, I took a good, long look at the circular, solid piece of metal at the end of the plug. I knew I needed raw power, but finding a source wasn't going to be easy. I thought of many ways to attain such a source, but none of them seemed to be a sound idea. I thought of stripping an outlet, but I'd never done that before. I didn't feel like killing myself with a 20-amp current. I thought of taking apart my microwave, using something inside to apply a direct current to the plug. But once again, I didn't want to risk getting fried. Nothing I thought of was going to be safe to attempt, and at the time, I wish I tinkered more with hardware than software. And just when all hope seemed to be lost, I had a revelation. I was looking in unfamiliar, untouched territory, so why not search for solutions in my own ballpark? I had to be more like Greg. I had to stick with what I know. I mean, that's how I got the cable fixed. So why not keep running with it? I wasn't going to let this weird-looking, confusing alien tech intimidate me. Think more like Greg, I muttered, scratching my head as I grasped for straws for a solution. That right there is when I had my aha moment. Flashes of watching my old friend drive off into the distance began to fill my head, giving me one of the brightest ideas I've ever had in a while. If I wanted a decent, stable, safer source of a power supply, then I needed to look no further than my front lawn. I mean, look, I'm not a car guy, but I had to know how to jump one after the countless times the battery failed. Those high school days were rough, and my parents couldn't afford to buy me a new car, so they settled for an old family hand-me-down. I'm a fucking genius, I said under my breath, abruptly making a beeline for my front door. With a small screen in my hand, the exposed circuit board's power cable dangling, I popped the trunk of my car. Even though I had a better, more reliable vehicle, I was glad that I was paranoid enough to keep my old jumper cables. My plan was simple. Hook the oddly structured plug into a jumper cable, attach the other end to the positive terminal of the battery, and watch as the alien tech comes, hopefully, to life. Carefully, I set up the battery to the plug, hoping all would go well. I must have triple-checked that both ends of the jumper clamps were properly secured. And could you blame me for being more mindful than usual? You tried repairing an otherworldly piece of hardware, and tell me how easy and not stressful it is. Taking a deep breath, I fished the car keys out of my pocket. I don't know why, but I decided to start the car on the count of 3. Maybe I was giving luck enough time to soak in the scene. But I felt compelled to take my time. 1, 2, 3. And with that, I heard my car engine rev up, followed by a light, fine purring. You know, I really didn't take into account that I could have destroyed the technology with an overload of power. But I didn't. In shock, I stared at the screen. I couldn't believe it. The screen was on. You know when you turn on your TV and there's no picture coming through, but you can tell it's on because of the light, the faded bluish color? Well, that's what I was seeing. At first I thought that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't going to get much other than a slightly brighter display. However, when I saw a bizarre foreign symbol pop up on the screen, I was astounded. I nearly fell to my knees. my vision clouded with tears. I was gibbering incoherently, stumbling over to the powered screen. After my legs finally gave out from the overwhelming emotion, I saw the alien symbol disappear, causing my heart to drop straight to my stomach. At that point, I thought I completely fried the circuit board. I was simply looking into the black screen, noticing just how disheveled I appeared in the reflective glass. I wanted to weep. But this time, not out of joy or astonishment. I wanted to cry because I believed that I failed. In a pit of rage, I pounded my fists into the concrete of my driveway. I screamed, I cried, I held myself like a mental patient off his meds. I wanted to take the damn screen, throw it at my useless car, and burn both of them in a devastating fire. But then I heard the faintest whirring noise. I lifted my head off the ground, wiping the tears from my face, and I saw the most beautiful sight. The screen. It was displaying an assortment of alien text. Once again, I had reached nirvana. Laughing maniacally, I scanned the indecipherable language with frantic eyeballs. I mean, yeah, I couldn't understand a lick of what the screen was showing me, but that didn't matter. I fixed and successfully powered a piece of hardware that I, and the majority of the human race, have never seen before. Nothing, and I mean nothing, could or will ever match the elation that I felt. It was like the most intense drug, and I needed another dose. I sprung to my feet, doing a celebratory dance that must have made me look like an insane person. I was fist-pumping, kicking my feet into the air, and making all sorts of inhuman ape-like noises. Unless you've died, gone to heaven, come back with proof of the afterlife, and were the only person to do so, then you wouldn't and don't have the capacity to understand the amount of pure ecstasy that I was on. In my hysterics, I didn't notice Greg standing right behind me. John, did I sell you some shit earlier or what? I yelped, not expecting to see another human in person for at least another month. Greg, why are you here? I exclaimed, trying my best to play off my excitement like it never happened. Greg eyed me up and down, probably wondering why I was having a psychotic break in my driveway. I think my wallet's somewhere on your couch. Can't find it anywhere. As Greg spoke, I noticed that he was peering over my shoulder, looking at my car battery setup. John, the fuck are you doing, man? You need a ride to the hospital? Honestly, I can't fault Greg for assuming that I lost my absolute shit. All he was seeing was my car running, jumper cables hooked to some screen on the ground, and to top it all off, he just saw me doing a corrupted Indian rain dance. Greg, could you keep a secret? I asked, temporary insanity impairing my judgment. Sure, my friend replied, his voice rife with concern and reluctance. I'm going to sound crazy, but you gotta believe me. After that, I began to ramble about the crashed spaceship, the dead alien I saw inside of it, and how I came to possess the hardware that I have now. The more my story dragged on, the more he seemed to distance himself from me. I think he was freaked out, maybe even scared of me, but I just kept blathering on. And then I had the idea to hook the plug up to my car battery, and guess what? It worked, I stammered, making sudden, fast hand gestures to drive my story home. Okay, so where's that alien shit? Greg inquired, his brow furrowed in confusion and worry. Without hesitation, I took him by the arm, pulling him over to the working monitor. This is it! You see, it's all that mumbo-jumbo. It's an alien language, I yelled, unable to use my normal, sane speaking voice. Greg crouched down, squinted his eyes as he inspected what was displayed on the screen. John, are you fucking with me? I was shocked and quite offended by that notion. I was about to rip Greg a new asshole, but then I realized that all this seemed like a big, stupid, nonsensical joke. Greg, you know me. When have I ever fucked with you this much? Greg kept his eyes on the foreign text, shaking his head as if he wasn't buying my story. Homie, you're a computer nerd. If anyone's gonna fuck with me about technology shit, it's gonna be your goofy ass. I did all sorts of mental gymnastics, hoping to come up with any way to prove my claims. And unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to prove that any of this was real. The craft was taken away by the government ops, the technology was so similar to ours, and anyone could piece together some bullshit fictional language. Plus, Greg wasn't the most tech-savvy guy, so any explanation I could give him about the hardware would just fly over his head. Greg, I know I look like I've lost my mind, but you know that I'm a cool, level-headed guy. Please, just let me show you the rest of the stuff I got. Begrudgingly, Greg stepped inside the house with me. He made himself at home on the couch, watching me carry the monitor through the doorway. "Yeah, thought you said that the car battery was powering that thing," Greg said, pointing to the monitor in my hands. I scoffed, believing he was trying to mess with me. As I turned the monitor around, I totally thought that Greg was trying to prank me, seeing if I'd dropped the non-existent act, but to my surprise, the screen was still on. The alien text was still being displayed. The faint whirring sound was still present, and I couldn't figure out why. Listening closely to the whirring, I traced its origins to the exposed circuit board on the back. Interestingly enough, there was a tiny green LED light on the bottom of the board. I didn't notice the light before, but I did notice the thin square black card that the light inhabited. Originally, I thought nothing of the card, simply believing that it was a component that I couldn't understand. Therefore, I didn't include it in my initial post. However, when I saw the card was attached to the power cord, I knew that what it was, that little insignificant black card, was a rechargeable battery. "What is it?" Greg asked, sounding more unsure that I'm pranking him. "Nothing. Not like you'd fucking believe it anyway," I replied. Setting the monitor on the coffee table, Greg went silent, opting to sit back and twiddle his thumbs. "You know what? You remember that heavy chrome ball you found?" I said, rummaging through my bin of alien tech. "I lied. It's not a family heirloom. I don't know what the fuck it is." I tossed the ball to Greg, promptly returning to rummage for all my hardware. "Yeah, man, it's heavy and smooth as fuck, but that doesn't mean that it's from outer space," Greg asserted, fiddling with the chrome sphere. Annoyed, I snapped at my friend. "Greg, just listen, okay? You don't get how big this is, do you? You can't believe me even though I have evidence right here, but I'm supposed to believe that you're actually trying to get out of the ghetto? Well, you got nothing to show for it." Greg's face dropped to a serious, angry, contemplative expression. "What, Greg? You gonna try to fight me? You just have trouble accepting the truth, don't you?" Now, as soon as those words left my mouth, my friend hurled the chrome ball right at me. I recoiled, anticipating a broken, bloody nose, but then... nothing. I thought he missed me, so I opened my eyes, expecting to see him charging at me, but no, Greg was still sitting on my couch, slack-jawed, looking like he was hypnotized. My brain raced to connect the dots of the situation, but then my eyes were flooded with unwanted sunlight. Blinking, I took a step back only to see the chrome surface of the sphere was reflecting the light into my eyes. It took me a moment, but when I noticed it, my head nearly exploded. The ball was floating, but it wasn't drifting aimlessly. It was seemingly stuck in a single frame of time. In disbelief, I waved my hands around the orb, thinking that somehow I was seeing things all wrong. "John? John?" Greg choked out, sounding like a little girl that just spotted a big hairy spider. I continued to swing my arms around the levitating ball, eventually grabbing my head as I stared in pure awe. Do you believe me now?" I stammered, still frozen in shock. Greg didn't say a word, he simply nodded his head, captivated by the impossibility of what he was seeing. Hesitantly, I raised my arms, reaching out for the gravity-defying object. As my hand drew closer to the orb, I began to feel this, resistance? It was like trying to touch two magnets together, but right as I was about to grab the ball, it moved away. It was incredible. The sphere moved. but only in the complete opposite direction of my hand, and without any kind of wobbliness. It was almost like it was on a table, and it was rolling in a straight line, but it wasn't rolling at all. John, fuck! Greg whispered, watching the orb move with bated breath. And just when I thought I had it, the orb fell onto the floor with a thud. This startled Greg and I, causing us to jump and scatter away from the grounded sphere. In silence, we stared at the chrome ball, waiting for it to blow up or something. Greg? You want to get it? I asked, still breathing heavily from the fear and confusion. Fuck you, man. You get the fucking thing, Greg yelled. No, fuck you, man. You get the thing, Greg yelled, his voice cracking as he stood behind me. Reluctantly, I bent down, reaching out my quivering, clammy hand. Like taking off a band-aid, I just grabbed the chrome sphere without thinking. Slowly standing upright, I treated the ball as if it were an explosive. My mind raced as I held the thing, because if it could randomly start floating wherever it wanted, then who knows what else it could do. Yet again, sunlight reflected off the surface of the orb, and with that, my fingers were instantly pushed apart. Greg and I scattered once more, but this time I noticed a pattern. As I stared at the levitating object, my fear began to dissipate. I stepped closer to the chrome globe, observing its behavior. Wary, I stuck out my arm, making a crane-like motion towards the sphere. I felt the resistance again, and like last time, the sphere began to move in the opposite direction. When it floated out of view of the window, the sphere dropped to the floor, making something click in my brain. I looked up at the blinds, taking note of the sunlight shining through, then back down to the chrome ball. At that point, I gained somewhat of an understanding of what was going on. Solar power. I mumbled, picking the ball back up. What? Greg choked out, still keeping his distance. This thing, it's solar-powered. Watch. I held the ball up to the sunlight shining through the blinds, successfully suspending it in the air again. See? Nothing to be scared of. My friend stepped up to the floating orb, still unsure of the safety. This is amazing. Greg, I can't believe this, I chuckled, playing with the levitating chrome ball. Dude, this shit's going on YouTube, Greg said, his phone out in front of him. Almost instinctively, I slapped the phone out of his hand. Greg, you said you wouldn't tell anybody, I barked, exasperated, worried about the wrong people finding out. Stuttering, my friend tried to make a case for himself, promising that he'd post under an alt account. Apparently, Greg doesn't think that the government operatives could track us down, all because he created a different account on social media. After lecturing my dumbass friend on how internet anonymity works, I put the sphere back in the bin, then took a breather in my office chair. You know, I was really trying to chill out after the whole thing, but Greg was pacing the room nonstop. He kept murmuring to himself, giving me some creepy, uneasy vibes. John? Greg shot out abruptly, turning his head to me as he chewed on his nails. Yes? I replied, leaning back in my chair, letting the ceiling fan dry the sweat off my face. You think this shit could make us big money? I threw my hands in the air, shaking my head with a dumbfounded expression. Dude, we're not telling anybody about this. How many times do I gotta tell you that? Greg sighed, looking like a child on the verge of a tantrum. John, man, ain't no black ops gonna roll up and kidnap us. I giggled, rubbing my forehead due to the headache that he was giving me. You're the most dense motherfucker that I've ever met. I watched the military literally airlift that spaceship out of the woods. They used a tarp to cover it up, Greg. A tarp! You don't think that they want this kind of shit hidden? Both of us would go missing. And that's why we're not telling a soul about this. Greg just kept at it. You know, he devised ridiculous schemes to sell the alien tech anonymously, begging me for just one circuit board, and overall, he just didn't get it. Greg, get the fuck out, will you? My friend shrugged, turning his back to me as he stormed off. Thanks, John. You really got your priorities straight. And my idiot of a buddy slammed the door, knocking one of my paintings off the wall. Not reminded too much. These flowery generic paintings of rivers and lakes, they were a dime a dozen. Plus, now that I had peace and quiet, I could work on more tangible pieces of hardware. The monitor. Honestly, calling it a monitor now is a misnomer. Knowing that it's basically an extraterrestrial computer, I should probably refer to it as such. The time I had with that alien computer opened my eyes to a few things. Firstly, there's a power button on the bottom right of the frame. And secondly, there's a keyboard. On the bottom of the frame, right in the center, there's a barely noticeable slit. And out of curiosity, the very thing that got me to this point, I went to touch it, only to have an entire keyboard unfold before my very eyes. And obviously the keys weren't labeled with anything recognizable, but on the left, there were 4 arrow keys, up, down, left, and right, to be exact. Now this is about the only normal thing about the keyboard, and I fully intended to see what I could do with it in terms of interacting with the user interface. I booted up the computer, sat through the weird multi-angled loading symbol, and watched as the alien text engulfed the screen. I sipped my coffee, analyzing every little facet of the alien operating system. In a neat single-filed line, the white text descended the screen. Hovering next to the first line of text, there was a small red circle. Again, these aliens have an infatuation with circles. Using the arrow keys, I made the circle move to the second line of text below. Seemed like a menu. Acted like a menu. But I didn't know how to click things. I inspected the keyboard again, scanning my eyes across the unfamiliar, baffling symbols. On the right, there was a key with yet another circle. I assumed that would allow me to select whatever option the cursor hovered next to. And I was right. I selected the first one naturally, and it brought me to a new screen. The screen displayed, wait for it, another circle. Next to the big white circle, there was more odd-looking symbols, and the symbols were angular and strange enough. Almost crop circle looking. The symbols got less complex as they descended next to a thin vertical line. The symbol at the very bottom was a simple dot, while the symbol at the top was 5 angular lines complete with a dot in the middle. I had a hunch, but I wasn't too sure about it until I counted all the symbols. There were 50 of these strange hieroglyphic-like symbols, and upon further examination, each line seemed to match the number that the symbol was on. The lines didn't follow these rules upon reaching 10, however, so I don't know. I think they're numbers. Anyway, I don't know what the screen was supposed to be for, so your guess is as good as mine. The cursor was nowhere to be seen, so I just pressed the circle key again and was taken to the mysterious screen. Back at the main menu, I selected the second line of text. This screen, however, was chock full of the same kind of symbols from the main menu, but this time coupled with those numerical characters. I didn't want to mess with it, but I didn't know how to exit out of the screen. The cursor was hovering next to an input box, and I wasn't about to type random shit into it, so I just carefully navigated around with the arrow keys. Eventually, I found the exit by clicking on 2 symbols sitting to the left of the screen, bordered with a white box. The next screen was far more unique than the last 2, although, just like the others, I have little to no idea what it's about. I clicked the third line of text, and then was immediately greeted with a white loading bar. Characters were appearing at a rapid pace below the bar, and then it stopped loading midway. It took me to a screen with more alien text, almost like it was telling me that something failed to do something. Descriptive, I know. The fourth screen was, well, very interesting. There was a big square plane, and on that plane there were so many little circles. I'm starting to love circles now. Anyway, I used the cursor to select the square plane, and with that, I could use the arrow keys to rotate the field or select one of the many circles. When I selected one, a window would pop open, show me a bunch of text that I couldn't understand. To me, it looked like a map of some region of space. And the circles, likely planets, stars, or maybe entire systems. However, the more interesting or unnerving thing about the map was that there were also tiny blue triangles, and these triangles were moving at different speeds. Upon selecting one of them, another window popped up, and guess what? I still couldn't understand it. Although in that window there were numerals on the very bottom, and they were shifting. Was it keeping tabs on the speed of these objects? I believe so. The blue triangles were mostly orbiting and or emerging from the blue circles, save for a few stragglers. As I selected another blue triangle, I noticed something that I hadn't with the previous window. An option button. And I was hesitant to click it, but damn, was I high on curiosity. I mean, I was peering into an unseen, uncontacted world of potential, and who knows how long this tech will last. If the government really did catch wind of what I was doing, what if I never get another chance to see every feature of this alien program? I had to do it. Letting out an exasperated grunt, I was about to click the options button, but something felt wrong about it. My paranoia often melds with my intuition, so whether it was the right choice to not click it, I don't know. That brings us to now. As I write this, the computer's powered off, sitting in the bin. And I'm tired. I'm very, very tired. I needed to bring you guys the update that you wanted. You know what? How about some interaction? I want you, the one reading this, to give me some advice. I want to know whether or not I should click that mysterious, kind of intimidating option next time. Sure, I don't think it's a good idea, but maybe you guys can persuade me. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I'd likely do it on my own at some point. So just give me some of your thoughts on it. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching tonight's video. Or listening to tonight's podcast on the podcast, if you're listening to that there at Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you can happen to listen to podcasts. I also want to tell you guys, if you look in the description, there's a lot of really cool things that you can always see down there, including links over to 2 Creepypasta books that I curated that are available now on Amazon. Check those out. The Creepypasta Collection Volume 1 and Volume 2. They're great for people that like horror, or creepypastas, or people who listen to this podcast. And of course, I wanted to give a big thank you to everyone who checks out patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta and supports the show, keeps the light on, gives me treats for my now 2 cats, both Hylas and Hercules. Both of them are a handful. And especially a big thank you to Saha, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Mazikeen, Ken Lando Higuchi, Chompski, Nico kaeo, Tristain Pelton, Stephen VanHuss, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, G. Weevil 3, TheRedOakShieldVirus, Hades' Nephew, Carter Barenfanger, Dr. Strawberry, Jordan Wayne Deckard, Bradney Leipe, The Government Monitoring System, Anne Charron, rumblefox, AcidSystem, Mike Bullock, Raphael Rodriguez, Dan Sweet, Mad Marstomp, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Sean Mills, Brian Arce, Cryptic Nightmares, Shadow Morningstar, Somber Puppet, Brianna Wright, Someone You Love, Said the King 56, Bad Honey, S-Man, Kiri the Sloth, Patrick Schoolmeister, Thomas Burgett, Barbara Maceo, Bobby Carmen, Liam Newman, The Homeless Bird 93, Sky Harbor, Caleb Dougal, Last Blade Song, Eliminator 86, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, and Corey X Kenshin. A big thank you to all of you guys and everybody down there in the description. I really can't thank you guys enough for supporting the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And everybody who listens, sweet dreams.